Okay. And then go through the implementation, and then how we report it, and analyze and act on it, and talk about the metrics that we've developed, metrics themselves that we've developed. Also, you may see that it says page 2 of 56. I don't have 56 pages. That was one thing I was not able to figure out. So what is performance measurement? It's a process that allows us to have quantitative information about what we're doing. And the quantitative part is important. The saying in the process management field is, if you can't measure it, you can't understand your process. If you can't understand your process, you can't manage it, and if you can't manage it, you can't improve it. So, really, performance measurement is it's really a quality process that allows you to figure out what you're doing effectively, what you're doing efficiently, and how you can improve it. It's an ongoing process here at the IV&V program level, which is the NASA itself, and at the IV&V services contract, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here today, our IV&V services contract, or ISC part of it. Performance measurement includes the process includes deciding what we're going to do, what we're going to measure, why we need to measure it, how we're going to measure it, and then how we report and act on it. So why do we do performance measurement? Well, as an engineer, you think it's good engineering practice, it's good engineering management. You want to know where you are, and the first part of performance management tells you where you are quantitatively. But it's more than that, because knowing where you are, looking at the metrics that you have, is like looking at a dial that shows you your current state of your plant or your process. You also want to know where you're going to be and where you want to be, and that you find out where you want to be by analyzing your process, determining your goals for the process, and those feed the goals for your metrics, and you're then able to track the progress towards your desired performance by following the metrics and establishing a baseline and following them across time. It also allows you to identify what might not be working for you and suggest possible solutions, and go ahead and plan for the future. And going on, why do we do performance measurement? Again, of course, it's good engineering practice, but it's also a contractual requirement. Our statement of work says we're going to support the IV&V process here, and we're going to collect and analyze metrics. It's a standard process, an industry standard, NASA standard. NASA has a particular implementation plan for their metrics program. And TASK as a company has our own measurement and analysis process that is part of our company quality management. So at multiple levels, there are multiple justifications for contractual and otherwise. So where are we in the performance measurement process? The diagram in front of you, the Venn diagram, shows you the ISC program in the middle. That is the task contractor and subcontractor team working for NASA here. Performance measurement spans what we do. It spans our company, the rest of our company, and it spans the IV&V program as a whole. NASA, looking at the NASA side of it, they want to know things that face out towards the customers. The different programs that come to us for IV&V. When is IV&V getting involved? You want to be involved as early as possible. And generally, they found, and I don't want to speak for NASA, this is just speaking generally here, they find that they are getting involved well before PDR in most projects. When is the IV&V program detecting errors? It's called phase containment. And generally, they're getting detected during the same phase of development as they're being introduced. And are results being accepted by the customer? And that's sort of the ultimate customer satisfaction question. And generally, almost all of them are. So that's a good thing, obviously. That's where you want to be. And that's part of the NASA metrics. Our performance measurement process has three main areas, three main categories. One is the project metrics. And the project metrics refer to the the different IV&V projects, which correspond to the different NASA programs that come to us, like ISS or JPSS, and what that we are doing verification and validation on. So the project metrics include examples like the quality of our issues and reports. We're interested in things like that. How are the timeliness of, how are we on time delivering our reports and products? And another question that's sort of an inside-outside question is, are we finding issues, are we resolving issues internally, or are we delivering issues, or are we delivering things that are then questioned after delivery? Obviously, we don't want to do that. We want to deliver the highest quality products possible. So we look at one of the things we want to look at is resolving questions before we deliver or after we deliver. And then the next major area is technical quality and excellence, or TQ&E. TQ&E is the process improvement arm, if you will. We're interested in the maturity, making sure we have mature processes and tools that the analysts who are doing the IV&V work can rely on. The TQ&E also does audits of our work, and so are the audits being done in a timely manner. Our reviews, like checkpoint reviews, which are major program reviews inside IV&V, are they being done in a timely manner? And to the working analysts, the people who are doing the bulk of the work, are the assets that we have, like the catalog of methods and the automated tools we have, are they useful? Are the analysts actually finding them useful? It's no good having efficient processes if they're not effective. So, and then of course there's also the business operations side, which is primarily related to contract performance to NASA, and then there's also internal corporate metrics, which are sort of not part of this, outside the scope of this. So to run down the performance measurement process, first of all, you need to know what is the point of measuring these areas. What are your objectives? So you want the program needs to determine its organizational needs to try to improve its process. We develop a performance measurement process which talks about the philosophy of our performance measurement and how we're going to approach it. And then that also includes the approach we'll take, the specific steps we'll take, and identify the stakeholders and who needs to be involved in the reporting, the reflection, the analysis, and the decision making. Next step, when you have the performance, your objectives, your program level objectives, is to develop your set of metrics. And on that, there's a pretty common technique called goals, question, methods. That's part of the specific tool used to approach that. And also the implementation plan. That's taking the plan, the performance measurement plan or process, and applying it directly to how are you going to do it, what are your data sources, who's going to be doing what, when will you be collecting, what are your sources of information, and so on. And then we're going to, then you need to implement the metrics, and that means to decide how you're going to collect them in terms of the data entry systems we have, or manual collection, if you need to revise any of your tools to do that. And then, of course, when you have them, when you have that in place, then you start collecting and analyzing the metrics and reporting them to the stakeholders. At this point, you have the metrics, you have the information coming in. Well, there's no point to it if you don't actually look at that and decide that it's either something that needs to be changed, or maybe nothing needs to be changed, but you do need to analyze and act on it, and that's where the final step comes in. That could be either remedial action, either in terms of changing your approach to performance measurement, because you find that it's not as finely tuned as it needs to be, or it's not in sync with the needs of the program, or the specific projects may find that they have areas where they need to improve a little bit, or change their approach. So as far as actually coming up with the metrics, we talked about the goals, questions, metrics approach. That's a standard approach. Basically, you identify your process improvement goal, and most of the time they're going to sound a lot alike because everybody's process improvement is I want to be on time, I want to satisfy the customer, I want to deliver quality reports. So when you look at the goals, they tend to cluster around similar things. An example here in TQ&E, again, you mentioned that we want to have useful assets, assets that are useful to our analysts. Then you identify any goals that are in support of the main goal. In this case, the catalog of methods, which is the set of different analysis methods we have that are approved for IV&V use. We want the supporting goal to be useful is that catalog of methods mature. Okay, so then you ask questions. Well, how do we fulfill those goals? How do we say what's useful for an analyst, other than saying, gee, did you find it useful? That's one way, but it's not a quantitative way. Another another question might be, how do we actually measure, what it means for this catalog of methods to be mature? So when you answer these questions, then your metrics are going to come out of that. And a couple of examples here, for instance, are is a particular method being used? If it's not being used, it may not be an effective part of your assets. Are methods available for a particular product? When analysts are developing a report or looking at analyzing software, do they have more than one, ideally, more than one way to approach it? Because that tells you that you have if you have a mature catalog of methods, for example, in this case, you will have more than one way to skin a cat. And you always want to have options that from which you can select the best approach for your analysis. Now, implementation starts, of course, collecting it, and it's all about collecting it. In this case, we use different sources. The Orbit tool, which is the system by which the analysts enter issues or TINs, which basically refer to findings inside the products they're analyzing. A lot of them are automatically compiled in Orbit. In some cases, we find to collect the metrics we want, we need to make some changes to Orbit. An example being, why is a particular issue being returned to draft? The draft state, it starts out in the draft state when the analyst prepares it, and when it goes to a program manager for review and approval, if it comes back to draft, well, obviously we don't want that. We want the issue to be as mature as possible going forward and complete as possible, and not come back to us. So we'll find that we want to know why we're doing that and be able to collect that and automatically. So we need to make a change to the tool to do that. Projects report as part of their internal reporting all the time, so a lot of the metrics will come from those internal reports. TQ&E does reviews and audits and logs that data, so that's another source of it. Business operations data that's collected as part of the business processes. And all this data comes together. There are different time frames for different metrics. A lot of them are monthly, but some of them don't make sense to collect on a monthly basis, and maybe a quarterly, something you're interested in at sort of the quarterly review level, or maybe it's a slow process, so it's a twice a year type collection. At that point, we have the metrics, so we're going to report them. You collect them at a certain rate, you report them at the rate which is natural for that metric. A lot of the data will go into the monthly management reports to NASA. Some of them are externally reportable to NASA. Some of them are internal business processes or internal quality improvement processes, and they'll be reported obviously to our internal IFC management. We report that quarterly management reviews and other reviews. Some of the data is fed back directly to the process owners, or actually all the data relevant to that process owner is going to be fed back to them. So because they are the ones who are interested in that metric, that's why they helped develop it. When we are talking to them about what sort of metrics we're going to use to support your goals. Well, they come up with that, and we're going to report it back to them. The process owners and the process management staff analyze the data, and can be in a variety of forms: raw data, charts that are appropriate, trend lines, everything that's appropriate to that particular metric. And then we compare it to the performance goals, see if we're meeting performance goals. If we're meeting them, well, that may mean that the performance goal we're doing fine, or it may mean that the performance goal is maybe set a little too low. If we're not consistently not meeting it, that could mean the performance goal is not realistic, or it could mean that there's a systematic problem. It's all part of addressing whether or not there are changes that need to be made, either in the process or in that's being measured, or in the performance measurement process itself. And as we go along, we'll keep evaluating our data to see if the kind of metrics we're collecting are useful. And also, they may be useful, but if we find that it's very, very difficult to collect a certain performance measure, then maybe it's not effective, cost-effective, as it were, to collect that metric if we're not finding that we're getting much gain from collecting and analyzing it. And then, of course, acting on the data as we talked about, we'll change processes. There may be training, there may be revisiting the goals that we started out with, the process improvement goals we started out with. We may find that we need to change metrics, change their associated targets, or we may need to just delete them altogether, or add new ones that are more helpful. And then go back and revisit the performance measurement process itself, that's something we do on an annual basis. Then we go into just to review the project metrics themselves, or go into the metrics themselves. So the first category being project metrics, and this is really just to show you that we have a reasonable number. You don't want to have too many metrics. You want to have enough metrics to do the job, which is then the job portion being improving your processes, improving your performance. Well, this is about on the order of a dozen or so. On-time deliveries versus late deliveries, that's pretty obvious one. Made test bed usage refers to a particular test bed being used in the ISS IV&V effort. It's a high fidelity test bed, which gets used basically a few times a month. I'm not going to speak for the ISS project itself, and that is a good supplement to the developer's own verification efforts, as well as the analyst IV&V efforts. So you want to make good use of it, because it is a high fidelity and good for flushing out a lot of subtle issues. But it also requires a lot more effort than the lower fidelity test beds. So you want to establish a target that says you're using it enough to make good use of that asset, but you're not using it to the point where you're putting too much effort into that and not enough into the other analysis efforts. Then there are we talked about internal versus external issues. In this case, the quality index, not an issue, where we find that in our own review inside the IV&V effort, it's not really an issue after all. So we're going to close it before we submit it to the customer. If it gets out to the customer and they find, it's not an issue, or it's not really the issue we thought it was, and it comes back to us that way, and we agree to withdraw it, well, that's obviously something you don't want that to happen too much. And if you never have an issue withdrawn after you submit it to the customer, you're probably not being aggressive enough in your efforts, in your analysis efforts. If you're having a lot of issues withdrawn, well, obviously then you're swinging too far the other way. So this index is kind of a measure that tells us how well we're doing finding things internally, but it also has another benefit, a role of telling us, sort of giving us a little calibration to that. And then again, we talked about reasons for why issues are returned to draft. Then there are acceptance rates by the customer and other. Well, I'm not going to go down the whole list, but you get the idea. Total number of days a draft are ready for review. That tells us maybe a little bit how efficient we are in getting to things. If there's a those numbers are very high, obviously things are sitting around too long. You need to figure out why that's happening. And then there are other things like technical report compliance. That's the sort of, are we complying to the format, the template that is established for this? So that's a fairly cut and dried metric that's a little bit more of almost an editorial metric. And then the next category being TQ&E, are we looking at the list? Are we getting all of the audits done that we planned? The checkpoint reviews, are they happening on time as scheduled? There are a variety of reasons a checkpoint review might get held up due to internal and external considerations, but this gives us a broad sense of how effective we are at doing the reviews we need to do. Again, going back to the maturity of assets we talked about before, some of these are set method usage over the previous 6 months, or do the assets we have cover the technical framework that is established by NASA? And then again, not going through the entire list, but this tells there's also latency questions, how long things are taking to get through the system. In this case, a review of new methods, and are we getting new new items submitted on time? And then the last category being business operations metrics, which relate to our contract performance with NASA. Okay, that's really all the slides I have. The conclusion, again, is the performance measurement is an essential part of what we do. It's an essential part of our quality and managing our system.
Are there any questions in the room?
I will remind phone to ask a phone to press *1 and state your first and last name.
I have a question.
Okay.
How would you mechanize
I'm sorry, say.
How are you mechanize
That's a good question. That's actually something that is already in the NASA metrics, and those again is getting through to them. But that was an established reporting process, and I actually don't have insight into that. That's going already. I think that's
Okay, so that's solely based on IDEA, so that's not where anyone in the has a problem, and you compare that to the IDEA collection, whether it's escape. So I guess that's this is specifically based on right.
Thanks, Travis.
There is one question. I'll take that at this time.
Yes, please.
Mary, your line is open.
Your line's open, Mary.
Hi, Mary, can you hear me?
Yep.
I just had a question as far as the metrics and what people are valuing and getting that up front in the beginning of the project. I mean, that's something we always try to do. That's going to vary by customers. I mean, I've had customers that were very concerned about a particular matrix, and your next customer might not even have any particular way that you approach or handle that, or anything in place for that. I mean, internally, it's kind of easy to track your stock in a way, because you know what your organization values, but as you approach the various organizations, what one wants may not be what another one is so concerned about.
That's a very good question. Our perspective, customer in this context is really IV&V program. We're looking at in our effectiveness in servicing the IV contract, our operations. The external customers or the other sense, but generally looking for the same thing in terms of effective teams that are accurate, high criticality problems in their products. So while their relationship with the IV&V in terms of what analysis they want done and what availability they have code and things like that, and how they want the analysis varies. I would say that metrics themselves, the kind of metrics we're looking at, aren't going to change a lot because the broader goals of the effective metrics and effective and timely products, are not going to change that much.
I understand, in essence, your customer is the same organization, so those values are going to be similar. It may, as they grow out, we have projects with, say, New York City and those sorts of things. What New York City values might be different than, say, what your Texas site values when we're doing testing for that. So I see where you're coming from.
I'd say too that, you're welcome. I'd say too that as customers that
I think we call each other.
I just add that add new customers that are non-traditional, like the New York City 911 system and other customers. As we review the process and we review the objectives, that's part of the process. We find we need to develop a new way to find what the customer needs, because they have significantly different needs that reach down into our process enough that it's not working as well for them as it is for our traditional customers. That's part of revisiting the process on a regular basis.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Various questions. A lot of our specific needs, relatives, and one of the nice tools to house this data. We're very used to seeing tools generally specific projects. So we're exactly right. We're able to use the same source of performance measure in the program.
Thank you again.
All right, if there are any more questions for Art, we're going to go ahead and send Art to the breakout session while we move forward with the next presentation.